Now to something a little bit more fun. Planning a trip can always be welcome, but finding the best deal can be a real pain. And a new report in the New York Times says it's a race between you and the machine. Your own computer is fighting you. Now, according to this report, travel companies are using hyperdynamic pricing. And this means artificial intelligence can go in and change the price of flights after scanning the web. It wasn't in your mind that was actually happening if you've ever planned a trip online. So for trends, news, weather, and even social media for information which could affect demand. Now, airfare prediction app Hopper says the average price of a domestic flight can change up to 17 times in just 2 days. So to go further in depth, we turn to Dr. Joanna Massey, C-suite executive and management consultant. Thank you so much for joining us on this.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I explained what hyperdynamic pricing is. How long has this been going on? This isn't a surprise because I swear I will look at a website on one day and just 6 hours later it will be a higher price, and sometimes I've even caught it being a lower price. Isn't this just a given this was going to be happening?
But this has always been happening. I mean, when you think about it, the travel industry has always used pricing, whether it was don't book on a Thursday because everybody books on a Thursday and they raise their prices, to, oh, always book on a Tuesday because they set their sale amounts on Monday. You know, it's always been like that. They've always utilized data in this way. It's just that digital technology and artificial intelligence in particular are really enabling them to take advantage of it.
And they're able to do it so quick. And I agree with you. Normally they would wait till the end of the day to calculate how many rooms they still have left. I mean, they're doing it now by the hour, which, by the way, is extremely annoying to those of us that always feel like we can get the better deal. In regards to this, are we talking about individual business websites, do you think, or kind of the deal seeker websites like Priceline and Expedia?
So it's actually, I believe, to be the individual websites, because Expedia and Travelocity and all of those websites do the same thing that the consumer does, right? They have to go to the individual websites to get the pricing. And on top of that, the private companies set prices specifically for those websites. So a lot of what we're seeing now is where they're setting a somewhat higher price for the Travelocities and Expedias of the world, and then keeping the lower price for themselves. So if you were to call the hotel directly or the airline directly or the rental car company directly, you might get a lower price.
Ah, that is an excellent tip right there, because, you know, we all have time to call around and get the numbers. I'm sure they are going to appreciate that, but this is kind of what they get. In the end, does this benefit, do you think, the consumer or the business? Because you can sometimes get a cheaper price if you catch it at the right time, but at the same time, I always think that you can never beat the computer.
I don't think you can beat the computer, but honestly, we live in a capitalistic society, right? And so we have signed up for this concept of, supply and demand, right? And I think the question of whether or not it benefits the company or the consumer is really about, look, I'm a communications expert, and I specialize in communicating with millennials and Gen Z as your employers or your consumers, right? So we're talking about people who are 30 and under for the most part, and they grew up in an all-digital era. And for younger generations, they look at it that, like, this is the cost of doing business, and actually, more importantly, this is the cost of doing business easily.
Right. And so how are we going to see this moving forward on that? And I, as a consumer, is there a good time for me to get on and get a good deal? Like you said Monday and Thursday. Does this kind of throw that out the window?
It definitely throws that out the window, but if you're smart about it, you described hyperdynamic pricing at the intro. To give some specific examples, let's say there's some hurricanes happening in the Caribbean. Well, the hotels and the airlines are going to lower their prices to make it more attractive for people to go there. So those are good points at which to book that kind of travel. On the reverse of that, let's say that some superstar singer has just announced a tour. Well, the hotels and airfare and rental cars are then going to go and look, the hyperdynamic pricing then goes and figures out when those tour dates are, where they're happening, and raises prices in those areas. So that's the kind of thing that you've got to look out for.
Well, and I also look for last-minute deals. How does that affect it? Because the hotel can say, listen, we've got 12 rooms available tonight. Rather have them filled than not. Maybe you can catch a last-minute deal. So this could actually help consumers.
Absolutely. That's exactly why capitalism works, right? It's supply and demand. So if the supply is low, then it's in your favor. If the demand's high, if there's low supply, then it's higher pricing.
Right. And the vice versa.
So it's about being smart about it.
Well, I thank you for coming on and giving us a little tips. And once again, can't beat the computer, so you might as well learn it and work with it. Make it your best friend when it comes to travel. Thank you so much for joining
Embrace
us.
change.
Exactly.